Hello Year 3. So this is part 2 of fractions on a number line, because this is where it can become a little bit tricky and confusing. So I thought I'd do one video, part 1, and this is part 2 where I think it gets a bit tricky. So we're just going to have a little listen to this lady explain what happens now. So we left the video on this, just counting increments 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, knowing we're dealing with fifths, and moving from there. Here is where it gets a bit interesting.
What if we extended the number line all the way up to 2? Remember, we're still counting in fifths because we can see 5 equal pieces between 1 and 2. 1 was 5 fifths. We want to add 1 more fifth. How would we write that as a fraction? What would that look like as an image? We would say 6 fifths. And if we added another fifth, it would be 7 fifths. Then 8 fifths, 9 fifths, and then we arrive at 2. How could we write that as a fraction? 2 wholes, each of them divided into fifths. If you count them up, you'll see 10 fifths.
So it is confusing because suddenly now our numerator is bigger than our denominator. So if we look at 8 fifths here, our numerator is bigger than our denominator. That's where sometimes fractions becomes a bit tricky, because we normally always deal with this side where the numerator never gets bigger, only becomes equivalent. And when it becomes equivalent to it, we know that it's a whole. But we are just counting on in fifths. So fifths is 1, and then we're dealing with another set of fifths. So they appear underneath: 6 fifths, 7 fifths, 8 fifths, 9 fifths, 10 fifths, until we get another set of fifths completed. So here was 1 completed, and then here's another set. So they're already completed. Here's another set underneath. So you just carry on counting with that same denominator. So if you see number lines like this, that's what you've got to do. You might have some missing numbers here, and you might think, what? But I've got to my 1. But sometimes you might be going to 2. You might be going to 3. So if you were going to 3, it'd be 11 fifths, 12 fifths, so on and so on, until you're completing the fifths up, okay? Multiples of 5. Let's carry on the video a bit longer.
But now let's take a look at those circles, those images. There's another way for us to name those fractions. Think back to 5 fifths being 1 whole. 6 fifths we could call 1 and 1 fifth.
Because we've already got our 1.
7 fifths we could say is 1 whole and 2 fifths. Are you seeing the pattern? 8 fifths would be the same as 1 and 3 fifths. 9 fifths would be the same as 1 and 4 fifths. Let's have a look at the number line from 0 to 1 again.
I actually find that easier. So yes, you can, and sometimes you're going to be asked to do this on top: 8 fifths, 7 fifths, 8 fifths, 9 fifths. But if once you get to 1, you know you've got your 1, you've got your whole, then you're just carrying on like you did before: 1 and 1 fifth, 1 and 2 fifths, because you've already got 1. 1's been completed. You've got all that used up, that whole. Okay, let's have a little bit more of a listen.
What do you notice about those fractions? Take a look at the denominators. Take a look at the numerators. We know that fractions less than 1 whole have a numerator
Just like I spoke a minute ago.
than the denominator. Oh yeah, I see that. What if we take a look at the number line between 1 and 2? What do you notice about the denominator? What do you notice about the numerator? Can you see that fractions greater than 1 whole have a numerator greater than the denominator?
So we're going past that whole.
You might want to remember that for the next slide. So now that you're able to count up in fractions, we need to think think about where would we place fractions on a number line? How
Hmm.
can we compare them? Take a look at these fractions. What do you notice? What's the same? What's different? Well, the numerators are all the same. They're all 1. Do you remember what we call those kind of fractions? That's right. They're called unit fractions. So where would these unit fractions go on the number line below? We have a start point of 0 and an end point of 1. Which fraction would you start with? I think I'd start with the easiest one. The one that has a denominator of 2. Why? Because I'd only have to break that number line into 2 equal pieces. And that's usually where I start when I'm looking at a number line. I look at the midpoint. There's the midpoint.
Good advice.
2 equal pieces. That's where 1/2 goes. Now where should we go? Well, if we think about 2 equal pieces, and we divided each of those 2 equal pieces in half, what would we end up with? That's right. We'd end up with quarters. 4 equal pieces.
1, 2, 3, 4
The
equal
only
pieces.
problem is we don't have any fractions with a denominator of 4.
Nope.
But we do have one with a denominator of 8. What could we do with those 4 equal pieces to make it into 8 equal pieces? We could divide each of those 4 in half.
Half it again. Yeah.
That gives us 8 equal pieces.
1, 2,
Do you see where 1/8 would go?
6, 7, 8. 1 8, 2 8,
Exactly.
3 8, 4 8, 5 8, 6 8, 7 8.
So we show 1/2 and we've shown 1/8. But how can we show 1/3 and 1/6? Well, I think we need to think about getting rid of some of these lines. Let's just keep it simple. Quarters and halves. We need to divide the number line into 3 equal pieces. Would that be greater than a fourth or less than a fourth? 4 equal pieces, 3 equal pieces. Let's show that. We could show that by placing these orange lines on the number line. Those orange lines indicate 3 equal pieces. And now we
1,
can place 1/3 on the number
2,
line.
3.
Now, our last one, 1/6. What could we do to show 6 equal pieces? We've got 3 equal pieces. That's right, we could divide each of those in half. We can see here with the yellow line and the orange lines that we now have 6 equal pieces. And therefore,
1,
we can
2,
place
3,
1/6
4,
on the number line.
5, 6.
What do you notice about the denominators? Interesting. So now let's compare. 1/3 and 1/8. Take a look at the number line. Would you say that 1/3 is greater than,
There's 1/3.
equal to,
There's 1/8.
or is less than?
They're not the same. They're not equivalent.
If you look on the number line, you can clearly see that 1/3
Yeah.
is greater
It's
than
closer to
1/8.
a whole.
Why don't you pause here and
There we
have a go
go.
at the next example on your own?
So, that will help you with your next set of questions. It does get a bit trickier, but I would go back to here when you're looking at the whole and how many holes you need and how you're counting. Right back there. That's going to help you. Again, this video is on White Rose Home Learning. To keep going through it if you are, it's a tricky part, year 3. And also looking for patterns, how she did so well when looking at these fractions. Look for patterns. Start with the easiest one. Half, you know, it's going to be the halfway point, and then you can kind of build around it. Good luck, year 3.